and welcome to the Curious Life podcast. My name is Yana Firestone. Today I'm joined by the very beautiful Olivia Rogers.
You're very nice, thank you.
Now, Olivia is not only beautiful but extremely qualified and does a whole lot of things that you may not be aware of. So in 2017, you were crowned Miss Universe Australia, which is a massive honour and title.
It was a massive honour, yeah. Very unexpected, but it was.
Was it?
Yeah, very much so. It was something that I never really saw myself doing and definitely didn't see myself winning, but it was amazing and it's led to so many awesome things for sure.
Absolutely. Well, maybe we'll start at the beginning because I think, as I mentioned before, I'm really interested in people's backstory and where they've come from and the things that drive us and, you know, the challenges that we overcome to get to where we are today. And I think there's probably really good reason that you're so much in the spotlight these days because you have incredible things to share with people and very bravely share a lot of the really tough things that have happened in your life. Yeah. So if we go back to the beginning, you were born in Adelaide and grew up in Adelaide?
Yeah, so I only moved to Melbourne 2.5 years ago. So definitely an Adelaide girl through and through, and I still love it. I love going back and seeing my family and friends because everybody's there. But yeah, moving to Melbourne felt like the right thing at the time, and I'm really glad that I did. But yeah, I grew up in Adelaide. I'm one of 5 children. 2 of them are from my dad's second marriage, so there's a bit of an age gap there. But the original 3, we're very close in age. Mum had 3 under 3, so my older sister is only 15 months older than me, and then my brother is 18 months younger than me. So
oh my God, she deserves a medal.
I know,
Seriously.
she really does. I don't think that we realised that at the time, but looking back, I'm like, God, I couldn't do that. So I have a lot of respect for my mum for getting through that time.
Totally.
Because I don't think we made it easy for her.
How could you?
But yeah, so very close in age. So I feel like that was very character building in itself. You know, we didn't always get along, that's for sure. You learn to share and, you know, not always get your way very quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we had a pretty cruisy childhood up until I was about 8 and Mum and Dad split up, which, I think was really hard on all of us, as it is on everybody that happens to, and unfortunately is so common. But yeah, so they broke up. I was about 8, so my sister was 9, my brother was 7. So we were all very young and didn't really understand it. And then when I was about 11, we found out that Dad has bipolar. So that was another sort of put a spanner in the works for sure. Yeah. So yeah, from then they were massive life-changing things, I think, in my childhood and sort of shaped who I am now, I think. And yeah, we went through a really challenging phase there. Like my siblings and I all gained all this weight and because, you know, Mum was like, don't be sad, like have an ice cream. And we ate our feelings. So yeah, there were a lot of things going on around that time that were tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you say that you kind of found out that your dad had been unwell. Was that something that they just told you because they felt like you should know, or were there things
No, we picked up on it.
Okay.
We'd been on a holiday with him and there were just certain behaviours and things that we were like, this is a bit weird. And we came home and told Mum and she was like, oh God, all right, like it's time to tell you. Because he'd been diagnosed years beforehand and Dad's amazing. Like Dad is a GP and he's really successful, and when he's not sick you would have absolutely no idea that that's something that he deals with because he manages it really well. But every now and then he has an episode and so they were like, okay, we've got to tell you because there was no other way to justify what was going on. My mum and my grandpa sat us down and told us about it, and my grandpa, my dad's dad, is a doctor as well, so his explanation of it was really good, and I remember it so vividly, I think, because it was such a big moment in my life, finding that out. Because I think as a child, it's very scary to hear that your parent has a mental illness because you don't understand it. And I don't think that you know that, physical illness is different to a mental illness, and hearing that, it's not curable, it's just something that you live with. I think that's really daunting because you're like, well, what do we do then? You can't get rid of it. It was hard. But I have a lot of respect for my dad, and I think that he's an amazing example of how you can live with a mental illness and still thrive.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think like there's so many things that come off me when I think about being so young and having those big discussions, because when you're little, your parents are kind of these invincible figures.
Yeah, for sure.
You never kind of imagine having to think about them in any kind of vulnerable way, and
you think they're superhuman, and then suddenly you realize that we're all just the same, and then they can't save the world and they can't save your world. I think it was hard to figure that out. And I think we had to do that. We had to grow up quite quickly around that time. Okay.
Wow, that's like two major kind of transitions and changes in your life, after being the nuclear family to then dealing with the separation and then more big information. Yeah. So how did you manage all of that? Like,
I was such a nerd. I still am. I think I really threw myself into my studies. I was never a sporty kid. So I couldn't ever do well at sport. I wasn't winning any medals. So my way of sort of, I guess, like, it was a bit of an attention thing. I really liked getting praise when I did well. So I became a very high achiever, and, I loved getting good grades at school. So I'd study really hard and always be up late doing my homework. And because, I feel like that was the way that my parents like really acknowledged me. They'd be like, oh, you did so well. And that was like, I don't know, it was just my thing, just being a bookworm. So I guess it was a good way to cope with it, because it just meant that I tried really hard at school, and I just always wanted to go on to study at uni, and just, that was all I sort of saw myself doing was academics. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. And that's where you ended up, because, I know that you're a qualified speechy. Yeah. So what kind of took you down that path? So
I loved science. I loved biology, physics, psychology. They were sort of the main topics that I did in my final years, and so I had thought about being a psychologist and doing counselling and doing, I thought about being a teacher. I love working with children. There were so many different things I'd considered, but somebody suggested to me doing speech pathology, and they were like, it's kind of a combination of those things. It's a combination of psychology and teaching, and you get to help people, and you can work with children, but you can also work with adults. Like, you can do so many different things within the field. So I was like, I hadn't actually heard of it, and a lot of people haven't. So I sort of just thought, I'll just go for it and see how it is, and if I don't like it, I can always do something else. But I loved it. It was very challenging, but from the first year I was like, I think this is right for me. So
amazing. Well, in my world, working with kids and speechies do a huge amount of work that lifts the load from us, because people probably aren't aware that a lot of kids on the spectrum work very closely with speech pathologists, and not, in working how to pronounce their words, but in learning behaviour. And
well, a lot of the children that I'm working with at the moment, because I'm back to practicing just one day a week, but it is predominantly children with autism, and a lot of them are nonverbal. So when I tell people that, they're very confused, because they're like, but you're a speech pathologist, like, aren't you helping them talk? But it's not it's not always actual speech that is the communication. So they communicate in different ways, and that's what we're working on. And it's very challenging, but it's really rewarding as well.
Wow, well, my hat goes off to you, because I know that's a really tough area of work. And
it is tough, but I love the kids, and also building such great relationships with the parents. It's I love it. It's
really
great.
Special. Amazing. Well, we've jumped forward quite a few years.
But to rewind a little.
Yeah. So I guess, your journey to becoming a speech pathologist also had this kind of other story going along with it the whole time, where you were suddenly discovered and dipping your toe into the modelling world.
Yeah. So as I said, my siblings and I gained all this weight when mum and dad split up, and I sort of turned to food as a source of comfort for a long period. And I remember very clearly when someone in my class tapped me on the shoulder and thought that I was a different girl, a girl who was quite big in my class, and I swear I felt my heart break. I was like, is that like how people see me? And it was this moment of like realization that I was like a big girl, and I did not like that. I think I was like 12 at the time. And I went home and I cried to my mum, and I was like, I don't want to be that person. Like, I don't want to, you know, I want to be healthy. And so I said to her, you know, I need to stop eating all this crap. And like, I just, you know, I wanted to just lose weight, and which is really sad to look back and think, you know, as a 12-year-old, I was like, oh, I need to go on a diet. But it didn't become an obsession or anything then. I think the weight actually fell off quite naturally because I just stopped having a milkshake after school every day, and like things that you just don't need.
Yeah.
So yeah, from that time, like I lost weight, but I had been picked on at family events and, you know, from family friends and other moments at school that people had said little comments about my size, and I had very small friends, so always being the one that's getting the, you know, the size medium or large when all your friends are getting a small, and just little moments where I always felt quite self-conscious. So I feel like even when the weight came off, I still felt like that chubby, insecure kid. And I don't think that really went away. So then I was approached to do modelling at about 17, and I was like, what do you mean? I thought they had sent the message to the wrong girl. It was a Facebook message.
Oh my God.
And I was like, really? Is this, maybe she's got my name wrong or something? Like, I really did not see myself that way at all. It was really flattering, but I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. But I sort of ummed and ahed about it for a long time because I thought, you know, obviously like she'd reached out for a reason, but at the same time I was like, I just don't think I'm confident enough. But anyway, I was in year 12 and I was like, oh, I'll just do it after year 12. But she was very persistent, this agent. So I ended up going in and doing like a modelling course, and it ended up being quite good for my confidence. Like I feel like it was a good way to sort of push me out of my comfort zone and make me realise that I wasn't that chubby, insecure little girl anymore. But, you know, it's hard to shake that when you've had it for so many years. Like I think, you know, by then it had been 7 years of sort of feeling that way. So you can't just sort of get rid of it. But yeah, so I feel like that was sort of the start of some amazing things, but also the start of some really terrible things too. Yeah.
So, you know, you've talked before about that kind of spiral down into disordered eating. Yeah. And I think you've said before it wasn't actually diagnosed.
No. So
outright. But.
Yeah, so around that time that I started modelling, I don't remember exactly when it started, but I do remember when they told me to lose weight. So my agent had said to me, you know, you have so much potential. You would do really well in Japan, like you've got the right look. But the thing is, like in Japan, you've got to be a certain size. So it won't mean much to anybody who's not been in the industry, because I would hope that people, generally speaking, don't measure their hips. But your hip measurement has to be under 90 centimetres, which is tiny. And I think at the time mine were at like 95. So I was pretty small. But I was like, what's 5 centimetres? Like, that's not a big deal. And she'd never said, you know, lose 10 kilos. But she said, you've got to get this measurement down. So I was like, oh, I can do that, you know. Being the high achiever I was, you know, you set yourself a goal and you can do it. Yeah. So I was like, I can do that. Like, what's 5 centimetres to go to Japan? And, you know, they said you can go for 8 weeks and earn $20,000. And as a 18-year-old, I was like, oh my God, that's insane. You know, I could buy a car. I could, you know, I was so, I was so motivated by that, and I thought it would be an amazing opportunity. And so, yeah, I just started dieting, just restricting certain foods and exercising a lot. And it definitely became an obsession quite quickly, because they had told me to get my hips down. So I was measuring myself every day, weighing myself every day, just wanting to get those numbers down. And to lose the 5 centimetres, I ended up losing something like 15 kilos. Whoa. Yeah, it was a lot. Like at my smallest, I think I was about 48 kilos. And for my height, that's just, not good. Yeah. So, yeah, it was a pretty quick spiral, I think. But I sort of used the whole modelling thing as an excuse whenever someone said, oh, you know, we're worried about you. And a lot of people did. Yeah. I was like, oh, I'm just doing this for modelling, you know, it's not forever, it's just temporary, I just want to go to Japan. And I think I was in complete denial that it was an actual problem. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, you've kind of come from the other side of things where you were feeling like you were overweight, and then, you know, your family might have seen you in that way, and then seen you get healthy and then
go the other way.
Yeah, the other way.
Yeah, and so many people then were commenting on my weight. At first, when I started losing it, you know, people tell you left, right and centre how great you look. And that is another way to sort of stay motivated, because you're like, oh, well, I'm, you know, everyone's telling me that I look good, so I must. And it becomes an addiction in a way, like losing the weight and seeing the numbers go down. I was definitely addicted to that feeling.
Yeah.
And the anxiety that I got when the numbers were going up or when they stayed the same, like it was really hard. Like it was overwhelming. But at that time I did develop really bad anxiety and depression. And they were diagnosed because I ended up, seeing someone for that. But I was pretty good at hiding the eating stuff. Yeah.
I think it's one of the more invisible kinds of issues that people have, because you can hide it. You know, you can just avoid going out and eating with people, or, you know. Yeah,
and I definitely did that. There were so many social occasions that I just made excuses for. And I think a lot of the time it was studying. Like I'd just say, oh, you know, I've got an exam or I've got an assignment due or something, and sometimes I didn't. I would just pretend that I did, because I knew that if I went to, you know, a certain restaurant and I wouldn't be able to order exactly what I wanted, or people would be watching me eat, or I just, so I'd just avoid putting myself in that position. So it's very isolating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Were you able, did it have an impact on your study when you were?
It actually didn't, which is bizarre. The moment I remember, I had a really bad panic attack, and this was before I'd seen anybody about any of my issues. There was a lot going on. Like, it was my first year of uni. It was a really hard year. Like, first year of speech pathology, the theory is just intense, like so many exams. And I was studying for my anatomy and physiology exam, which they say it's like the same as fourth year med students, that exam. Yeah.
Crazy.
And there was just so much to learn. And I'd attended every single lecture. I'd taken more notes than any person should. I was studying so hard, and I sort of knew I would do well, but at the same time, sitting at my desk, I was like, I can't do this. Like, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm going to fail. And I was living with my grandpa, not my mum at the time. And I called her, and I was just beside myself, and like I couldn't breathe. You know, I don't know if you've had a panic attack before, but I felt like I was going to die. And I said to her, I can't do this. I don't know what to do anymore. Like, I need to go and see someone. So I did do my exam the next day, because I was like, I couldn't not. The thought of not doing it was more stressful than the thought of doing it.
Yeah.
So I did it, and I was so thin that I remember sitting through that exam and just being in so much pain. It was a 3-hour exam, and I had no fat on my butt whatsoever. So sitting on a hard chair for 3 hours, like I had bruises on my bum.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was awful. And I was freezing cold as well, because I just had, no fat on my body whatsoever. I was just skin and bone. But after that exam, I went to the doctor, and she referred me to a psychologist. And then around that time is when I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. But the weirdest thing was, I got my exam results back, and I got a high distinction. And so it didn't affect my studies. Wow. Yeah. As in, it didn't make me fail or anything like that, but it affected it in the way that I was so obsessive and trying to be so controlling about every aspect of my life, that it was just too much. Yeah.
Well, maybe it's that perfectionism and that high achieving. Yeah. In a sense, it's kind of almost lucky that you have that drive, because you were able to maintain such a high level of achievement.
Yeah, but it just completely burnt me out. But then, that was the end of the year, of my first year. So I remember, it was in November, and we were coming up to Christmas, and once I'd finished all my exams, I just stayed in bed all day and just bawled my eyes out, because I was like, I don't know what to do with myself now. Like, uni had been my way of controlling my day and controlling my eating, and the thought of having way too much spare time, when I was just stuck in my own head, was just so overwhelming. I was like, I don't know how I can do this.
Wow.
It was a hard time.
So how did you do it?
Sorry, I'm going to get upset.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, it was just like, I remember that month so well, because the thought of getting out of bed was so unappealing and scary. I think the only thing that did get me out of bed was exercising, because I felt like I still really needed to do that. But, the thought of facing the day every day was just, it was really hard. And I had suicidal thoughts all the time. And I think, I told a few people that I was struggling, but people just didn't really understand. I think because from the outside it looked like I was fine. I was getting all these amazing modelling jobs because I was starving myself. I was doing really well at uni. Like, I'd been written this letter of congratulations from the head of the something to do with the head of the uni or something. I don't even remember, but you know, things that were going really well, but it didn't give me any satisfaction. And I remember, you know, I love dogs and I love children, but I would see like my young cousins and feel absolutely no joy, and like see our family dogs and same thing, like nothing was making me happy.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just didn't know how to get out of that. It was really hard. But yeah, my psychologist was a lifesaver, like literally a lifesaver, but it took a really long time. And I think because I did hide the eating disorder side of it, you know, I was put on medication for my depression and anxiety, but you can't fix something when no one knows that it's a problem. So I was still dealing with all of that for the next 5 years. So it was, another 5 years before I think I actually got better with my eating, and I did that on my own. So I really don't recommend that. Yeah. You know, if anybody is listening to this who's struggling with it, like I can't stress enough the importance of telling your psychologist everything, because trying to deal with it on your own is just, it's not easy at all. Yeah. And it's not fun.
No, and it's, as you were saying before, you were describing it like it's just this constant battle with yourself. You're constantly thinking about exercising and eating and what you can and you can't eat. Yeah. And then you've got this whole conflict, because internally it's a negative thing and you're struggling with it, but externally you're getting more and more jobs and people are...
I moved to Sydney.
Wow.
When I was, you know, at my smallest and at my sickest. Yeah. But my depression, like I didn't feel as anxious because I was on this medication. It definitely helped. But I was like, I was getting all this praise and being told how amazing I looked. And every time I went into the agency, they'd measure me. They're like, keep it up, you're doing so well. I was like, oh my God, I look like I'm going to die. And I would see photos of myself and think I looked hideous. But then that's when I was booking the best jobs. And I'd be at a shoot and they, you know, at photo shoots, often they order you like pizza or they serve you lollies. They don't give you proper food. And then when you don't eat it, they're like, oh yeah, of course, you're a model, you don't eat. It's like, well, actually, like, I can't stay this size if you're serving me food like that. Like I physically can't. My body is not built to be a size 6. Yeah. But so there was just so many conflicting things like the entire time. I lived with a family in Sydney during that period, and if I didn't, I don't know what I would have done. I couldn't have coped because they were amazing, and you know, she knew that I had an eating disorder, but she never pushed it. Mm-hmm. But she'd always like cook me really healthy, amazing food and just, you know, sort of put it in front of me. Yeah. And she was helping me without making it an explicit, like an obvious thing, if that makes sense. Yeah. But it was a daily battle. Like it's just exhausting because you are constantly fighting with yourself and also keeping it to yourself. Like the fact that I felt like I couldn't tell anyone because one thing is I actually don't think I wanted to get better yet. Yeah. Because I wanted to keep modelling and I wanted to keep doing the things I was doing. And if I told someone about my eating disorder, they'd be looking out for the signs and they'd start picking up on all the things that I was hiding, and I was hiding it very well, obviously, because nobody was, you know, saying anything about it. Mm-hmm. But I think after that period I stopped modelling in Sydney, and that did help me mentally massively because there wasn't that pressure anymore. But in terms of my eating disorder, that doesn't just go away. So even though I looked better physically, like I'd put on some weight, I think I felt worse because I knew I still had an eating disorder. And then to look at yourself and know that you don't look like you have an eating disorder and you do, it's kind of this like shame, I think, that comes with it. Mm-hmm. So at that time I felt like, if I told anybody I had an eating disorder, they probably wouldn't believe me because I don't look like I do. There were just so many... there were a lot of thoughts, a lot of negative thoughts going on at that time.
It's like psychological warfare constantly. Yeah. And I guess the thing that's most striking about all of this is how much of a private battle it is. Like you just think about the people that do talk about it have usually come out the other side, and you just think how many people must really be suffering with this without anybody knowing about it.
Oh, so many. The amount of messages that I get on Instagram if I post something about what I went through is just like, it breaks my heart because there are so many girls that will say to me, I've not told anybody, but they tell me. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because, you know, when you open yourself up and you share your vulnerabilities, like you sort of open the floodgates and other people want to share theirs as well. And it's amazing. But at the same time, it's like, oh, I would just want them to go and speak to, you know, their mum or a psychologist or someone who can actually help them, because I think it helps them that I talk about it, but I can't fix their problems.
No.
But yeah, it's scary to think about how many people go through it. And I just don't think that the statistics are true, because it's way worse than what it sounds, because people don't admit to it.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't admit to it for a really long time. So I just think there are so many people that are going through it and we have no idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because now you're back doing a bit of modelling. So, like, how do you feel about kind of being back in the industry that was really the main driver behind your...
Yeah. I know it does sound a bit backwards. I think, like, it took a really long time. I had to have a break from modelling. I was like, no, I'm not doing that again. Like, that was awful. Also, modelling in Sydney was pretty awful for me. I was constantly going to castings and getting rejected. You're just waiting for your phone to ring. And out of the, you might go to 20 castings and maybe get one of the jobs. Wow. So it's so much rejection, and you're constantly thinking, oh, well, maybe it's because I'm not skinny enough, or maybe my, you're looking at the other models that are getting the jobs and you're like, well, I'm just not enough. You just never feel like you're enough, because even when you do book a job, and obviously they book you because they think you look like the right fit, there's all the other ones that you don't book. And so I think everybody thinks that it's such a glamorous thing to do, but it's really not. Like, it wasn't at all. And, you shoot for summer in winter. So I remember this shoot on Bondi Beach, and I was at my skinniest. So I had no fat on me. So I was freezing cold as it was, and it was 6 degrees, and I had to get in the water.
Oh my God.
The photos came out. I had the biggest fripples in the world because I was so cold. But yeah, it wasn't glam at all. But so it was pretty easy for me to be like, no, not doing that again. I need a break. So I threw myself back into my studies, and I was working in retail and just, and painting as well. So I started selling my paintings, and that was great. I was loving life doing that. And then about another year passed, and I started getting asked to do a couple of photo shoots here and there, just little brands in Adelaide. And often it was like a friend of a friend, and they'd pay me in clothes, or, it wasn't necessarily like what's considered a proper modelling job. But I was enjoying it. Like, I remembered what I liked about modelling, and they were booking me as I was. They weren't saying, oh, can you do this shoot in a couple of weeks and lose a few kilos first? Like, it was never, that was never a thing. So I felt like I could just be myself and book these things, as I am. And that was good. Like, I feel like that was really good for my mental health, and that was good for my confidence, because even though I was still struggling with my eating, it wasn't as bad. And I found like that was helping me.
Amazing.
But then I got asked to do Miss Universe, and at first I was like, absolutely not. This is going to make me sick again. And I had literally, I think when Miss Universe approached me, I didn't say, but with my eating disorder, so I'd say, even though it wasn't diagnosed, I feel like I can diagnose myself. I definitely started off with anorexia, because I was just not eating enough, and it was complete, like, my body was just in full starvation mode, and over-exercising, and I think I had all of the symptoms of an anorexic person. I was losing hair on my head, I was growing extra hair on my back, I was cold all the time and exhausted all the time, and just, very unwell. But then that turned into bulimia, because I think it got to a point where I couldn't avoid those social situations. There were dinners that I had to go to, but I was like, how can I do this? How can I manage this? And so getting rid of the food was the solution. Yeah. So for a very long time I was bulimic, and I had then been abusing laxatives as well. All these ways that, laxatives don't actually get rid of anything, but it feels like it. It's sort of that feeling of just getting rid of everything in your body that I felt like it very briefly got rid of my anxiety. So that's what I was struggling with. And it had been, 6 months of not doing any of that. I remember putting a cross in my diary every day that I had gone without making myself sick. And it'd been 6 months around that when they asked me to do Miss Universe.
Wow.
So although I felt like I was better, but 6 months is not a very long time. And I was like, oh, it's just going to push me over the edge again. So I initially said no, But then they were quite persistent, and then they said, you know, I spoke to a few different people who said it's amazing and the owners of it have changed, and they're really down to earth and lovely people, and it's all about being fit and healthy. It's not about being skinny, and all these different things that I was like, okay, well, maybe I should just like do the first round and see how it goes. So I decided to do that. My mum was as well. She was a bit hesitant because she didn't want me falling back into any bad habits. But I basically said to the Miss Universe organisers, you know, if you do encourage me to lose weight, then I can't do this. Like I won't do it. And they never did. They, you know, they loved me for me, and I was never told anything negative. I never had any negative feedback. It was all positive. They were amazing. And, you know, I was like, oh, well, maybe, like, I never thought I would win.
Yeah.
But the fact that I got through to the national final just as I was, I never then felt pressure to change, because I was like, okay, obviously they like me for this reason, so I'm not going to go and, you know, starve myself or do anything crazy. So I feel like in a way it helped me to stay better.
Yeah.
Because I was, I think if I then was to suddenly lose weight, then everyone would notice. And yeah, it sort of held me accountable in a way, I think.
Amazing. And it says so much about where you were at mentally, that you were strong enough to actually say to them, this is my bottom line and I don't want, you know, I mean, you can imagine that being a really intimidating situation and feeling like maybe you didn't have a voice. But
yeah, I think, well, because at the time I was 25, and I know that's still not that old, but I'd come such a long way. You know, my first issues with my mental health were when I was 18, I think, 17, 18. So I felt like I had really come such a long way, and I knew I'd come to the point where I know my triggers. Like I know what makes me anxious. I know what sets me off food wise. So having that awareness, I think it definitely helped. Like I couldn't have done Miss Universe when I was 22 or 23 or even 24. So I think I did it at the exact right moment in my life, and it was honestly one of the best things for me, because I think it sort of propelled, you know, I'd been kind of open about my mental health beforehand, but it made me more open. And I think it was around that time that I started talking about my disordered eating. And yeah, like I said before, I feel like it held me accountable, because I'd basically then told the world that I'd had an eating disorder. And I was like, if I ever fell back into those habits, then everyone would know. So I need to not do that. So yeah, now it's been about 3 years that I've been completely better. Wow. I mean, in saying that, you know, there's still the negative thoughts that pop up, of course. I don't think they will ever go away, which is unfortunate. But
also pretty normal. I think most of us, you know, have negative thoughts about ourselves, about our body, about how people look at us, what people think about us.
Yeah, for sure.
So I guess it's about finding
Everyone's
that
got
line.
their little demons. Yeah, I think it's just being strong enough to, you know, kick them out of your head when you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the whole Miss Universe competition, again, people would probably think about that as just a very glamorous kind of moment in your life. But what does it actually entail?
So the actual competition, it's so much more about your personality and your brain. And I don't think, like I really don't think that I would have won or even got into the national final if I hadn't had, you know, my life story behind me and had studied speech pathology. And so I think that helped me to be more confident with public speaking. I used to hate public speaking, but speech sort of pushed me out of my comfort zone there. But I think there are so many, you know, interviews and Q&A on the spot, on the stage, and you need to be able to hold yourself and be confident and be sure of your opinions and have a story. So there's so much more to it than just your looks and being this beauty pageant that I think, you know, the word pageant has such a negative connotation, and I hate the word. I hate saying, like, or when people say, you know, people sometimes write articles about me and they'll call me a beauty queen. I'm like, ugh, that's not me. But like, I get it, because I think that comes with it. But it's so not that, you know, that toddlers and tiaras, like plastic fantastic American thing that you picture. But I mean, in saying that, like going overseas, because I went over to Vegas and competed on the international stage, and that was just amazing and so different and something that I find it hard to explain to people what it was like, because it was just like, it didn't feel like my life. I felt like I was sort of watching myself go through it, because it was, very different. But yeah, it is, I think Miss Universe Australia, what it is now, is it's an amazing competition. And I think, you know, everybody asks me, like, is it really what you say it is? And, like, they think I'm just I'm not getting paid to say that it's good. Like, no one's paying me to say that. Like, I mean it when I say, like, I had the most positive experience ever. And if I hadn't won, like, it still would have been something that I look back on with, like, such fondness, because it was such an amazing time. And I made friends with all these girls from all over Australia, and I was just having the time of my life. And then, you know, when they said that I made top 10, I was like, oh, thank God, because the tickets were expensive, and Mum had got a whole table of her friends there. And I was like, oh, at least it's kind of worth it for them now that I'm top 10. So then when I got to top 5, I was like, oh, even better. You know, like, at least I made it far enough to justify it. And when I got down to top 2, I was just waiting for them to say Georgie's name. So my runner-up was Georgie Mitchell, and I was like, oh, they're going to say Georgie now. And then they're like, Olivia Rogers. I was like, what? I literally turned to one of the judges and said, what the fuck? And she was like, don't do that. Like, I had so many cameras on me. But I was so shocked.
Oh, my God.
And yeah, it was amazing.
Wow.
And honestly, like, the first year, I think I was pinching myself. I still do. Like, I still feel like it was just something bizarre. Like, I just never pictured myself doing it at all. But I'm so grateful. It was, an amazing experience.
Yeah, and it's led you to where you are today, which is giving you this incredible platform to share your story and influence so many people in such a positive way. And
thank you. That's so nice. It is. It has been an amazing platform, and I do feel like it's been really positive in the way that I can talk about mental health and my eating disorder, and hopefully help people to be more open about theirs and reduce the stigma.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest challenge across all mental health, that the stigma of just asking for help or admitting that there's something going on is the biggest hurdle to overcome.
Yeah, definitely. And I think particularly when it comes to eating disorders, because there is such a shame associated with it, and this sort of embarrassment and fear of judgment, and I get that, because they're the exact feelings I went through. But I think, you know, the more that I can talk about it, and because I see people in the industry and I'm like, oh, I know that they're not well, and it's really hard. And the conversations that I hear, you know, like coming up to certain events, and people were like, oh, I shouldn't eat this and I shouldn't drink that, and I shouldn't, you know, oh, I better do an extra Pilates class tomorrow because I ate too much today. I'm like, oh, like all of these things that they say that they think are just throwaway comments, but they're so damaging. So we've still got a really long way to go.
Absolutely. And I was talking to someone about this the other day. I think, you know, I'm so worried for the next generation of young people coming up who look at Instagram and, like, their whole view of the world is a completely filtered, face-tuned,
perfect world,
unattainable image. I mean, we're creating cartoons of ourselves and posting them as if they're real images. And, you know, there's a place for filters, and there's a place for a bit of, you know, moving a blemish out of the way. But there are, you know, whole industries of women who are completely changing every part of how they look. And I just wonder, like, what is that going to do for young people?
Yeah, it is really scary.
Yeah. Because it's just not real.
No.
Yeah.
I think it's becoming more and more common that people are being more authentic, and I think it's amazing. I feel like people's feeds are still very filtered, but when it comes to stories, like, a lot more people are sharing, you know, more of the nitty-gritty, everyday life stuff that people want to see. And it's, you know, when I share that, or when I talk about, you know, there are certain things that have been triggers for me recently. Like, I got sent a pair of jeans and it was the wrong size, and I tried them on and they didn't fit, and that is a massive trigger for me. And I think it always will be, like, certain clothes not fitting, and it's weird because I know that I feel good in the body I'm in now, but there are those things that throw you off and make you think, oh, I should probably go for a run. And I you know, hear myself saying that to myself, and I'm like, no, Olivia, shut up. And I have to, like, change those thoughts. But it is when I share something like that, like those real moments, that people respond so much better than if I share, you know, like a photo from a photo shoot. People don't want to see that, like, because of course you look good when you've had an amazing hair and makeup team, and you know, you're styled by an amazing stylist, and you're wearing these expensive clothes, and but that's not real life. Like, that is not real life. So people want to see the real things, and they want to know that you're a human and that you do have your down days, because everybody does.
Absolutely.
So we need to talk about that more, for sure.
Absolutely. I think that's a really powerful message. And as long as that's still kind of getting out there, all the other stuff's really fun. And, you know, people do like to see photo shoots and see people looking glam. But
as long as there's the real stuff in between, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Like even, you know, this week has been huge. I've had all of the race days and I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
There's a lot of makeup and dressing up and wearing heels. My feet are so sore. But it's, you know, it's so glam and everything, but the in-between times, like, you know, I have been exhausted and I have been a bit flat on the days off. No, I haven't had days off, on the hours off. So that time between, and you know what, I feel like I haven't necessarily shared that, and I feel like I'm sort of contradicting myself, because, you know, I do say that I want to be real and share that, but sometimes when you do feel like that, you don't feel like putting your face to camera and showing the world. But yeah, I feel like I've got to remember why I'm doing it all and force myself to keep pushing that message, because that's, you know, the reason that I'm doing everything, I think.
Yeah, but you are also entitled to come home and switch off for those 3 hours and not document every single moment of your life.
That's true.
So don't feel bad about that. That's you just looking after yourself.
Yeah, it's always a bit of a balancing act, for sure.
Yeah. So what are the things that you do to kind of, you know, find the joy and restore kind of the settings for yourself?
I hang out with Justin. Like tonight, we are just going to have a chilled night, probably catch up on Love Island because we've missed it this week. Maybe The Bachelorette as well. Nice. You know, watch some trashy TV that just lets me switch off and, you know, not really think, and hang out with the dog and just relax. Cooking, I love cooking, which is amazing for me because, you know, I had such a bad relationship with food for such a long time. But now that I've come out the other side, like I absolutely love cooking. I love making healthy, delicious meals and cooking for Justin and my housemate and, you know, enjoying that together. I feel like I've really got a healthy relationship with food now, and it's something that I really enjoy. Exercise, you know, and that's another one that it took me a really long time to use it in a positive way. But now, you know, if I'm anxious, just going for a run, it helps me so much. Like that's like my therapy. And sleeping, making sure I'm getting enough sleep. That is such a big one. It's like it completely goes hand in hand. If I'm sleep deprived, I feel flat. Like that's just, it is how it is. And I know that, like, I need to stay on top of my sleep. Sometimes that's hard to do, but yeah, having a nap is really good for my mental health.
Totally, 100%.
Highly recommend napping.
Yeah. I think that's a really important note. I think everything is so much harder when you're tired. And some of the kids that I work with, they'll come and see me in floods of tears and not be coping and not know what's going on. And I just ask, well, what time did you get to bed last night? And they're like, 11:30.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, well, that's probably the first place to start.
100%. You know? And my mum used to say, I remember being upset sometimes when I was little, and she'd be like, you're just tired. I'm like, no, I'm not. But that's how I am now. Like, I'll speak to mum now even, and she'll be like, I'll be complaining about something. She's like, you need more sleep. I'm like, oh, mum. But she's so right. Yeah. It's so true. Sleep is just the best medicine.
100%.
I think too, like when I'm feeling overwhelmed and anxious and I've got a lot going on, like writing things down and, you know, nutting it out and working out what the priorities are, what I really need to do and what I can, you know, leave for next week or the next day or prioritizing things helps a lot too. And I think remembering to say no to things, because that's the thing for me. I say yes to a lot and I overcommit, and then I wonder why I'm so anxious. And
totally.
So it is sort of checking in with myself and making sure I'm doing all of those things. And if I am doing all of those things and I'm still struggling, it doesn't often happen, but then I would go and see a psychologist or make sure I'm getting that help that I need and ask for help when I need it. Yeah.
Totally. Such an important message. Yeah. Really.
I just think there's no shame in that. And, you know, if you've got a sore foot, you go and get it checked out. Like if you're struggling mentally, we need to know that you can go and get help and it's not embarrassing. It's just something we need to do. You can't look after anybody else if you're not looking after yourself. So
100%.
Yeah.
So what else is coming up for you? What does 2020 look like for you?
I'm getting married.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's exciting.
It is exciting. Justin and I got engaged about 5 months ago now, which has just flown by. So organising a wedding will be a big part of next year. Work-wise, I've got a lot of amazing collaborations coming up and different ambassador roles, and a few of them are under wraps at the moment, so I can't really say that. And I hate being clickbaity, but kind of got to wait and see.
Yeah.
But yeah, just cruising along and saying yes to the opportunities that come my way. And I feel like, you know, since Miss Universe, I've just sort of been riding that wave and trying to make the most of everything. And as long as it keeps coming, then I'll keep saying yes. But yeah, that and speech pathology. So amazing. I'm loving being back in that. And yeah, so that's going to be a big part of next year too, I think.
Amazing. Sounds like you've got a really good balance going on.
Yeah, I feel like it's really important to have that, I guess, separate world. I said to Justin the other day, I feel like when I'm practicing as a speech pathologist, I've got this like alter ego, like because the work is so different. Like being a speech pathologist compared to attending all these events, and you know, I was in the birdcage yesterday and looking around, and it could not be more different to the other work that I do. But I think it's so important because, you know, there's only so many conversations you can have about Instagram and all of that. So it definitely keeps me grounded, having those intense but rewarding experiences with my speech work. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, where can people connect with you if they want to get in touch?
Instagram. Instagram is definitely the number one. Yeah, my manager's email is attached to that. So she is amazing and she manages all of the things that come through. I don't know how she does it. But yeah, so connecting with her, or otherwise send me a DM. I do try to respond to as many as I can. It can be a bit overwhelming. That's one of those things that once you start, you're like, oh, now I can't stop. But yeah, I like to get back to people. I think, you know, when they take the time to reach out and often they say lovely things, I want to get back to them. So yeah, I do like to chat to people on Instagram. Yeah, but that's probably it, really. Beautiful. It's my main source of connectivity.
Excellent. Good. Nice and streamlined. I like it. All right. Well, I'll put the links to your Instagram up on the show notes.
Amazing.
And
thank you.
I just want to say thank you so much for sharing so much of your story and being so vulnerable, because I know that that's going to make a huge difference to so many people listening.
Thank you. Thank you for chatting to me.
Thanks for all your time.
No worries.
All right.
Thanks, Jana.